Well, good evening, everybody, dear listeners. We are speaking with Mr. E. Michael Jones. Like it or not, he is one of the most influential Catholic intellectuals that are alive today. So nice, nice for you to giving me some time, some of your time.
Thank
Well,
you. Thank you for that kind introduction.
well, I think it stands. Uh, so, but did not help you much in order. I mean, you are digitally persecuted, I've seen.
We're struck down but not abandoned, as St. Paul said.
Is this can we say that is some kind of a state persecution? I mean, some kind of a state censorship?
No, we wish we had a state here. We do not have a state anymore. We have big private organizations like Google and Amazon that rule us in the absence of a state. We live in a country that is ruled by warlords. It's Somalia. The United States is one big Somalia right now. And we just have to make sure that we don't do anything that offends the warlords who are in control of our culture.
Well, I mean, let's say in Catholic circles, you are an important figure, and I don't know, banning you completely from three platforms. It's as if somebody told that USSR did not ban Solzhenitsyn. That was Commissar Igor that signed the paper or something like that.
Yes, we could have an interesting discussion about which system is more tyrannical, communism or capitalism, as practiced in the United States today. I don't know. You can tell me. But if we had a government, if the government did this to me, I would have recourse.
Okay.
If they arrested me, I could call a lawyer and I could have a trial and I could defend myself. I can't do any of this with Google. I can't do anything with Amazon. I can't do anything with Facebook. These people control the marketplace. Amazon has 80% of the book market, over 80% of the book market. If you're not on Amazon, you do not exist, and you have no recourse if they ban you. Well, this is tyranny. We live in a completely tyrannical society right now. So whether it's more tyrannical than communism in Yugoslavia or less tyrannical, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, it's a different kind of tyranny, I guess. Well,
That's right.
unfortunately, I have some bad news for you too, because, well, I mean, if anybody will have an idea of canonizing you, it won't pass in the system like this. I mean, with actions that are taken by the Holy See at this time. Well, let me explain. It's about Stepinac, our Archbishop. If you allow me in a short introduction before going into the matter. So Stepinac was basically the Archbishop of Zagreb in the period before the Second World War, during the Second World War, and after the Second World War. So basically, his track record during the Second World War is not an issue. He was he was a solid. He was something that you would expect of a Catholic, of a good Catholic. He was saving the Jews and the Serbs during the persecutions. We have numerous books about him saving innocent people. One of those books is a book written by Esther Gitman, a Jewish writer, that wrote a book called Aloysius Stepinac's Pillar of Humanity, of Human Rights. Sorry, but the problem is, so basically in the book you can find that he personally organized saving of a Jewish retirement home, that he basically evacuated it and hid the Jews in the monastery outside of Zagreb. Uh, he also, but in the book you can read that his commands and, let's say, his actions, well, resulted in some 200 to 400 Jews saved during the Second World War. The same thing with the Serbs. So he was convicted, I mean, when he was arrested by the let's say by the communists, you had some Serbs writing an open letter defending the Archbishop. Well, did not help. So the long story short, he was imprisoned. He was found guilty, imprisoned, and in the 70s, the process of his canonization began. It was in the final stages now, and in order to finish it, some problems arose. One of the problems is his statement from the 30s, in which he says that, well, behind all of pornography in Zagreb, there are Jews and Serbs. So obviously, well, it's an anti-Semitic and a Serbophobic statement, and I immediately thought, well, I heard this stuff from someone also. I mean, so I guess you're the guy to come to.
Yes. Okay. Now, first of all, Cardinal Hlond in Poland at around the same time said exactly the same thing. He said the Jews were behind pornography in Poland. Now, did these cardinals just make this up? Or is it true? Is it true that Jews are behind pornography?
Well, you're the expert.
I'm the expert, that's right. Why am I asking you? So the point here is that I said this in an article in 2002 or 2003, and it led me to be banned from the synagogue of conservatism in America. I was scheduled to give a talk at a big organization, and they banned me from that. And then after that, a Jewish professor by the name of Abrams published all of my material, took all of my material, published in the Jewish Quarterly, and the only thing he changed was the value judgment. Because I said Jews are behind pornography and pornography is bad. And he said, yes, Jews are behind pornography, but pornography is good. That's the only difference. So you've got all these people saying Jews are behind pornography. You can find Jews who say Jews are behind pornography. But if you say it, you're an anti-Semite and you will be banned. Now, the problem here is not Cardinal Stepinac saying that Jews are behind pornography. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. It was common knowledge in the 1930s. The whole battle over the Legion of Decency in the United States during the 1930s was over obscenity in Hollywood. So everyone knew it, okay? But no one was allowed to say it, okay? Now, that's not the problem. That's true. That's a true statement. What is the problem here? The problem is that Jews now have control over who gets canonized in the Catholic Church. This is an absolutely intolerable situation. Who gave the Jews the right to tell Catholics who their saints are? Who is that? Tell me, who is it? Well, who came to Zagreb to give the bad news to the Croatians? What was his name?
It was Cardinal Parolin.
Parolin, yes, okay. Now, what is the problem here? It's not only Jews have the right to determine who the Catholic saints are, Jews have the right now to determine who is a Catholic in good standing, which is just a variation on the same theme. So I'm going to Nairobi, and I'm scheduled to give a talk at the Catholic University of East Africa. Now, 17 years before I went there, I gave a talk at Strathmore University. So I called up my friend at Strathmore and said, since I'm in town, why don't I just give a talk at Strathmore too, since I gave one there? Well, he contacts the dean. Guess what the dean does? What is the dean going to do here? Is the dean going to call me up and say, hi, I remember you? Because she was there. I met her before. Do you know what she did? She Googled me on the internet, and the first thing that comes up whenever my name comes up is going to be the ADL website. And so she goes to the ADL, And they say that I'm an anti-Semite. So she says, we're not going to invite this guy. He's an anti-Semite. Now, Jews have the ability now to determine who is a Catholic in good standing. This is intolerable. This is an intolerable situation. There is never, am I overgeneralizing here? Has there ever been a time in the history of the Catholic Church when Jews have had this power?
Well, in this case, in case of Stepinac, there actually is, let's say, there are not only Jews. I mean, technically, is the delegation of the Serb Orthodox Church, then that was called by Pope Francis to, let's say, to talk and to dialogue with the Croatian Commission in order to let's say, to find a compromise on Stepinac.
Find a compromise? What compromise? What's compromise have to do with sainthood? Either you are a saint or you're not a saint. What is this compromise stuff? Let's take a step back here. Let's take a step back and go back to the end of World War II. After World War II, the Soviet Union took over all of Eastern Europe. The Croats were sold out at Bleiburg. Okay, the Allies returned them, and Tito orchestrated this notorious death march. Okay. And the persecution of Stepinac was part of that takeover. Okay, it wasn't the only place it happened. Cardinal Wyszynski was put on trial by the Poles, and Cardinal Mindszenty was put on trial in Hungary by the Soviet puppet there. The Soviet puppets who were installed there. Now, this is part of the campaign. It wasn't just Stepinac. It was an attack, a communist attack on the Catholic Church. Well, who was responsible for this?
Well, in a way, Stepinac is in a bit different position because at the 1948, this was this famous event that's called Tito-Stalin split. Basically, at that time, what happened is something similar that that the priest called Hepburn did with the universities in the U.S. Basically,
Hesburgh.
Ah, sorry. Basically, Tito was let's say the marshal of the West. He was in charge of let's say of the Soviet or Bolshevik parts of the Europe. I mean, from France to Greece. It's all the spy networks, the logistics, the organizations. He was in charge of all that. And at one point there was disagreement between him and Stalin, and he basically took control of the entire Soviet operation in all these big parts of Europe. That was very costly to build. It took lots of years for the Comintern or for the Soviet secret service to build, and it was a big investment. And he basically appropriated it. And the story is that he became neutral, not neutral, but non-aligned. Well, it's something non-aligned in the Cold War is something similar of being an atheist in Northern Ireland. You're either Catholic atheist or you're Protestant atheist.
Right.
So Tito was 100% an American atheist. I mean, he was American.
He was a socialist. I mean, the non-aligned movement was socialist.
No.
People forget the role, the geopolitical role that Yugoslavia played in the 1950s. It was a significant role in world politics because he had the so-called non-aligned nations behind him who said that they didn't want to be communist or American imperialist, and so they had their own identity. Julius Nyerere was part of this non-aligned movement. India was part of it. Nasser was part of it in Egypt. A whole group of people, and it's all forgotten now because of the polarization that accelerated when John Paul II became Pope. But Nyerere was a Catholic, but he was a socialist, and he was determined to square that circle. When I was in Dar es Salaam, I asked his daughter, did your father ever read Quadragesimo Anno, which says no Catholic can be a socialist or a communist? She had never heard of Quadragesimo Anno. Nobody ever heard of this. Nyerere could not have succeeded as president of Tanzania if he were not a socialist.
Okay.
Because that's where they got the money. He could go to Olaf Palme, and Palme or Willy Brandt would always write him a check because he was part of the Socialist International. And I suspect that this is what Tito saw.
Well, Tito was also born as a Catholic. He's from mixed Croatian Slovenian heritage, but he was a baptized Catholic. But he was also excommunicated in 1946 when he convicted Stepinac by Pius XII. But what I was aiming at was the American involvement in Stepinac's trial, because when Tito splits from Stalin, and takes all the Soviet, let's say, possession, all the Soviet operation in this huge part of Europe, in all of the Balkans. It was infrastructure, organization. He took everything with him, and he switched the sides, basically. So at this point, the America, the US, is to Tito what today Russia is to Assad. It was like air for him. We have. Right. I live near.
Are you sure? Are you sure it was America and not England? Because England was definitely involved during World War II.
Yeah,
in suppressing. Mihailovich, everything he did got attributed to Tito because the MI5, Randolph Churchill, Guy Burgess, all the Cambridge traitors were in charge of intelligence, and they were the ones that created Tito as a great hero.
Yeah, it's just the story that I've heard here from tradition is that the British played the wrong card. Immediately the royal family went to England, and they put all their eggs in this royalist basket that was a loser from the start, because nobody liked the guy. He was tyrannical in his rule in the former Yugoslavia, and it was to build anything on him was dead at the start. The Americans here played much better roles. We are talking after 1948. So the World War II is over. There is a Tito-Stalin split. The guy in charge of the CIA in Belgrade, it's called Charles Morton English. He's from Vancouver, the former OSS, then the CIA. And he makes an arrangement and starts. It's the same kind of situation we have now with Syria and Russia. The only thing that kept Yugoslavia from being, let's say, overrun by the Soviets and by the Eastern Bloc was the direct American help that was here present in huge quantities. There was like ship after ship coming in the port of Rijeka full of planes, tanks, stuff, and ammunition. And basically, what I wanted to say when I'm aiming this, you have the nice story about this Catholic senator, Pat McCarran, from Nevada, I think. So it was obvious that Stepinac was not guilty, that he's imprisoned because basically he refused to separate the church from Rome and to make a patriotic Croatian church. Let's call it that way. He openly said, "I'll rather die." So they wanted to fulfill his wish. He was sent in a jail. He was jailed, and this guy Pat McCarran was, let's say, a Democrat and a Catholic, and he knew all of that, and he was in charge of the foreign help committee or something like that. Foreign Affairs Committee or something like that. He basically wanted to veto all these ships and all this help going to Yugoslavia until they released the cardinal, until they released Stepinac out. But the let's say the WASP ruling class was fine by having Stepinac in prison, because for their taste the Catholics were too strong in Europe anyway, and releasing Stepinac would not. I'm not really sure why they dislike the Catholic Church getting stronger in Europe, but I'm sure you can. I mean, there is some statements of Stepinac about Luther being a false prophet, and the Reformation being a deformation that's responsible for his words are bloody hell that is today in Europe, or something like that. That there is a statement
Well,
for
the point here is that there were people that were outraged by what McCarran did, because it wasn't just that he represented Catholic interests across the board during that period of time. Also, the whole birth control operation, McCarran was part of opposing that. So as I've said it before, but America is just like Yugoslavia. It's the same thing. You got three ethnic groups based on three religions: Protestant, Catholic, Jew, as opposed to Croat, Serb, Muslim. It's the same thing, and they're always at war with each other over who's going to dominate the republic. And so this was the war that was kind of suppressed during World War II, because the government needed Catholics to go over and die fighting their cousins in Germany and places like that. But after the war, it came back with a vengeance. And you can have books like Paul Blanchard's American Freedom and Catholic Power, and you can see what happened. There's an alliance now, a Jewish-Protestant alliance against the Catholics. Because in certain circles, and I'm talking now about the intelligence community, which is basically all WASP Protestant. They all came from Yale. The CIA came from Yale. It was all members of secret society like Skull and Bones, okay? And they felt that the Catholics were taking over the world. That's the way they felt in the 1950s, and all the way up until 1963. Their worst nightmare seemed to come true when John F. Kennedy was elected president. And I think this led to his death. I mean, maybe you believe that it was a lone deranged gunman that killed John Kennedy. I mean, maybe you believe that. That's the official story. It was created by Alan Dulles to cover over a conspiracy. And the conspiracy involved Lyndon Johnson, the CIA, and Israel. That's the conspiracy that killed John F. Kennedy. But I'm saying at this point, there was war, covert warfare going on against the Catholic population of the United States of America. Psychological warfare in terms of sexual corruption. Kinsey was used as a weapon against the people of Germany, specifically the Catholics in Germany, who had their own Legion of Decency. It was called the Volkswachtbund. They battled against Schmutz und Schund, and Kinsey was the weapon. That's when the word report became a German word. It wasn't a German word. That's just one manifestation of what I'm talking about, of war against the Catholics being waged by the United States of America. The second was urban renewal, the ethnic cleansing. That's a Yugoslavian idea, isn't it? The term ethnic cleansing came into English usage when Yugoslavia broke up. Yeah. But that was happening in America, in all of the big cities of the North and the East that had large Catholic populations. The blacks were being sent into those Catholic neighborhoods and Catholic parishes to engage in ethnic cleansing. So there are all of these similarities, and in order to understand what's going on, you have to know who the players were. You know, that's the story. It's very similar. There's another instance that we have to talk about here, which is basically, I think I mentioned it before, but Dusan Makavyev's film, W.R., Mysteries of the Organism. This comes out in 1970 or 1971, and it is announcing the new Marxism. The new Marxism is sexual. It's not economic, and it came from Yugoslavia. It had a big impact on America. It was played up in Rolling Stone big interview with Dusan Makaviev, I believe, in Rolling Stone about his movie. This was all played up because there was going to be some mystical convergence here, like Yugoslavia. You know, in other words, the new, the left wing in the West was going to link up with the left wing in the East, and the common denominator was going to be sexual liberation. And Yugoslavia played a big role in that over here.
Well, Yugoslavia, as it was officially separated from the communist brothership of the Eastern Bloc, here was actually the open access of Hollywood movies. And I remember in the 80s, it was also, let's say, basically the new wave of soft porn was coming basically from Germany. From Germany in the 80s to Yugoslavia. That was, but in the 80s, everybody knew that communism was on its last legs, so it did not matter anymore at the time.
That's right. I was in Mostar in 1988, and it was in 1981 Tito died, and as soon as Tito died, within 1 year we had Medjugorje. The apparition that was run by the CIA. And now that's been regularized. I think we talked about this the last time.
Yeah, that's where our first interview was on Medjugorje some 10 years ago, I guess.
Yeah. So who's controlling Parolin? I mean, what is this? Is this gratitude? Is this gratitude to Croatia for breaking with Yugoslavia? You know what I mean? The independent Croatia that completely offended the Orthodox and broke off all relations, ecumenical dialogue between Rome and the Orthodox, because the Vatican and Germany were the first countries to recognize Croatia as an independent Catholic country. And now this is the way they thank you. This is their way of saying thank you, Croatia. We're going to suspend the canonization proceedings of Cardinal Stepinac.
Well, there is actually the mixed Croatian-Serb commission that basically blocked the canonization of Stepinac. It is basically some attempt to the Catholic Serbian Orthodox dialogue. But we could talk about that too. That is an interesting topic. I see that I basically don't see the independence of Croatia and the independence of the Yugoslav republics the way you guys see it. I mean, I'm here on my, let's say, on my home side. I mean, I basically live here, but also you have to have in mind that it was not. One thing that changed basically from Stepinac to this day is the way the Catholic Church looks at Protestants. The Catholic Church looks at the Orthodox. Stepinac, in one of his statements, said it was about abortion. That he always called them schismatic government in Belgrade, that does not want to do anything about the plague of abortions in Zagreb because the Serbian Jews doctors are behind it. They don't care about them breaking the law. He was writing letters to the doctors and stuff. So you can see his attitude that's like it's basically schismatics, and the way that let's say Catholics and Serb Orthodox should live together it's some kind of modus vivendi, but to dialogue, I mean, what's here to dialogue about? There are, I mean, who's in the right church? I mean, whose church is the right church? How can you dialogue about that?
It depends on what you mean by dialogue. I mean, we've already had the Council of Florence in the middle of the 15th century healed that schism, healed the great schism, and they sent the cardinals, they sent the Orthodox back, and the people rejected it. So that was the end of that. I don't think we're talking about insurmountable theological problems here. I don't see it that way.
Yeah, basically.
I see it's always some type of geopolitical issue that keeps these people divided.
Yes, the way I see it is that let's say the coming together of the churches was what prevented the reunification of the churches was national interest of these of these states. Because you said something. You said a very nice statement that when you take the Bible out of the church, what happens? Well, the same thing. If you take the see of your church out of some supranational place like Rome, and you put it in your nation's capital, well, what happens? You have the super tribe. You have the something like chosen people 2.0 or something like that. That it's very hard. That can be.
You're talking about the Orthodox now, the national churches.
Yeah, I'm talking about the national churches that are very effective, but in the same time, I mean, that there is not much in common to dialogue and to try to. I don't think that there will be some unification through dialogue here, because it will mean to give up their advantage and their status of the true church. I mean, they cannot unify without giving that up.
How about I'm not disputing the fact what the true church is and national churches or anything like that. But the last time I saw Bishop Perich, I brought up this book by Avro Manhattan, which is still, was created during the show trials. It was created at the time of Stepinac as propaganda. It's communist propaganda to destroy the Catholic Church, discredit the Catholic Church by attacking Stepinac. Okay, so I said, well, why don't we get together and come up with a real history of what happened during the war? Let's have a joint Serb-Croat commission, and we'll go over the documents. So then he said to me, well, yeah, great idea, but the government took all the documents. They pulled a truck up to the Chancery office in Mostar and looted the entire documents, all of the archives, and so they have no basis. At least that's what he told me for coming together.
Okay, what I want to say, it's known why the communists disliked Stepinac. I mean, it was the ideological enemy, and he refused to establish the national church. But you have, besides the communists, you have now two groups that are opposing Stepinac. Is basically the Serb Orthodox Church, and is I won't say Jews, because some Jews actually nominated Stepinac. There is some rewards for the people that saved Jews during the Second World War, and he was nominated twice. But I mean, he is after all an archbishop, so they passed him on that.
But there's only one of those groups has veto power in the Catholic Church.
Well,
the Serbs don't have veto power over who gets made a saint.
Well,
maybe,
in this case,
maybe in Yugoslavia they do, but not in general.
In this case, they do, because they are made. There is this papal commission that includes also the Serb side, in order to further the good relations between the two churches and for for future unification. But what I wanted to say is their motives for opposing Stepinac are not the same as communist motives. He saved some Serbs, and he was saving Jews and Serbs during the war, but they have a bigger motive to oppose him. It's kind of like it's against their national interest for him to be canonized. Let's put it that way. I mean, the Serbs and the Jews that were saved, that are like little Serbs and little Jews. Here is this big game in trying to make him look bad, and in trying to make the Catholic Church look bad, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, should we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay, I was reading your book, The Logos Rising. I'm going through it, but the one thing that I immediately realized, that my education was was in fact a big misdirection. I we were.
So tell me when you were at the university.
I was in the university in the early 90s.
Okay.
90 to 95.
So was it still communist in its orientation?
The professors were from the former system. The professors were communists, but the ideology was now, let's say, English.
Yeah.
Liberal, some kind of liberalism tied to capitalism, right. Free markets.
It happened across the board, so don't feel bad. One of my sons went to the Sacred Heart University in Milan. One of the founders was Aminatore Fanfani, who wrote one of the best economics books in the Catholic tradition, based on Quadragesimo, run about the same time. And as my son arrives there, and all they're preaching is the English ideology, English economics, free trade, all of this type of stuff. It swept the world.
Okay, yeah, it was. we came. What was pushed before the 90s, let's say before we switched from communism to the English ideology, was also some view of history that was actually taught a lot about Hegel. And that will be interesting to you, because their view of history was like, let's say, the communist, Marxist view of history. It's like right. It's like a big tournament of philosophers. Something like Aristotle beat Plato, then Bacon beat Aquinas, and in the end you have Hegel, let's say, being a pinnacle and beating all the rest, all the guys that were in front of him, and then here we have Marx, the one that let's say brought Hegel to a new level, and he's now the ultimate thing that we have.
Right.
So basically, this view of history and of philosophy is still well and alive in our universities. I mean, the most popular philosopher from let's say our region is Slavoj Žižek. He's a Marxist Hegelian, I guess, at least nominally. So, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. Well, it's not surprising. But the problem, I mean, we all know this. We all know. I mean, the problem here goes back to Hegel. I don't know whether you've read the Hegel chapter. Have you read the Hegel chapter in Logos Rising?
Not there yet.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a turning point, because Hegel, at this point, Hegel was born in 1770. He's 19 years old when the French Revolution breaks out. So he's a Lutheran seminarian, constantly hearing news about the French Revolution in Paris, and trying to bring these two things together in his mind. So can we bring Christianity and the Enlightenment together? And the vehicle for that was the dialectic. Because, first of all German idealists were all they were all theology students. So we're talking about Lutheran theology here, trying to come to some type of understanding of the Trinity, because the dialectic is based on the Trinity. And the Trinity is the ultimate reality. We know that now. We know that Logos is the Trinity. This means that there's a motion to God that was completely antithetical to anything that the Greeks understood, because the sphere of the divine sphere was completely immobile. It was eternal forms, and nothing changed. And there was no creation. And so you had this immobile. So suddenly you have this dynamic sense of history. And history has a logos to itself. And Hegel is in the middle of this, trying to figure it out. And then he got into trouble because he had an affair with his chambermaid. This does not sound romantic. He's not like Schelling. Schelling was a brilliant guy. He was good looking, and he was, the women, were very attracted to him. Hegel was kind of, kind of a clod. Wasn't a very attractive guy. So anyway, he falls in love. It doesn't fall in love with her. He just uses her as a sexual outlet. She gets pregnant, and then she announces that the baby, she's pregnant, and the baby's going to be born right around the same time that the phenomenology of spirit is coming out, and at the same time that Hegel is about ready to, not Hegel, that Napoleon has destroyed, is going to defeat the Prussians at Jena. All of these things come together. It's a crisis. And so what does he do? What does Hegel do? He falls back on Luther. He understands Christianity through the eyes of Luther. And Luther is the man who attributed evil to God. It's called, the doctrine is called the enslaved will, de servo arbitrio. And he wrote it right after he capitulated to his sexual appetites and married the nun Caterina von Bora. At that point, he said, there is no free will. God did it. God is the author of evil. And at that point, you have blasphemy. You've completely destroyed the Christian theology. You've destroyed any sense of the Trinity. And this is precisely what Hegel did when he introduced negativity into the dialectic. So that the second stage of the dialectic is the negation of the first stage. Well, there can be no negation in God. There can be no evil in God. And as soon as you put that distortion in, you ruin the project, which was a legitimate project. There is I think, a real reason for you to want to understand the Trinity in the terms of your age, which meant the Enlightenment. In other words, it's above reason, obviously. But there's a way in which we can understand it as informing the world we live in a way that's important to do that. Well, he wrecked that. He wrecked that because he attributed evil to God, because he didn't want to attribute it to himself, because he's the same as Luther. It's not me, it's God who did it. As soon as you put evil into God, into the Trinity, as soon as you put evil as the second part of the dialectic or non-being, which is simply the Thomistic understanding of evil as the privation of being, the dialectic becomes a machine. It operates all by itself, and the first man to figure that out was Feuerbach, who was a student of Hegel, and he said you don't need God if you have evil as part of the dialectic. And the man who understood Feuerbach was Karl Marx. And Karl Marx then turned history into a machine. And, well, once you do that, you can't understand history. Because the driving force behind human history is free will. It is the free will of human beings. That's not the end of the story, but it's part of the story. And so the whole conflict between understanding human history is understand how human free will interacts with God's predestination or God's eternal plan for human history. Both of those things are absolutely true, but it's not immediately apparent how those two things function with each other. Because we think if God has a plan, well, then we don't have free will. Or if we have free will, God doesn't have a plan. It's not that simple. And I've told you before, I think, that the story that explains this in the Bible is the story of Joseph, who says to his brothers, sell him into slavery. It's an evil that they do to him, but he ends up becoming head of the granary so that he can feed Egypt. So this is how complex God's plan is. He allows evil because he knows he can bring about a greater good. And so Joseph says to his brothers, the evil you intended to do to me has been turned by God's power into good. All of that was lost on Hegel. All of it, and not all of it, because the cunning of reason is a sense, an admission of that. The Hegel's idea of the Lichteffenung, the cunning of reason, is some sense that there is an absolute power at work here, and it'll chain its ends no matter what. And no human will can stop it. You can collaborate it, you can try and thwart it, but no will can stop that power. And that led to Marxism, which is a crude version of Hegel because it's completely historical determinism. And so this leads to the contradiction in Marxism. Well, if history is inevitable, then why do I have to do anything? Did you come across this? I mean, when you were a student, did anyone bring this up when you had these Marxist professors, like that contradiction there?
No, actually, it was a much lower level. How they explain Marx is okay. So you have the thesis, antithesis, and the synthesis. Well, the synthesis is basically not necessary. It's the better world. Is basically the synthesis is a revolution. So you have the thesis, and then the antithesis, and that's it. It's like,
right.
And that was only the only way that was put down, that was explained, was only in the, let's say, in the political terms of the class fight and all this Marxist jargon, basically.
Right.
All that matters in Hegel is basically the class fight and the new order, the better world, and the revolution. That's the core of what Hegel has to say, but like Marx put it in the better words.
Right.
Sort of.
It's a crude simplification of Hegel.
Yeah.
What did everyone accept this? I mean, what was the atmosphere like in your philosophy classes when you were a student at the university?
Well, I studied economics. So this philosophy was more like listening to the smartest people on the university that were basically they were all the Hegelian Marxists in the philosophy department. And what was the prevailing
Now wait a minute. You're talking about 1990 to 1995. Well, communism had just failed.
Yeah.
It was a colossal failure. The Soviet Union had collapsed. How can they be Marxists now?
I wanted to say the professors remained on their posts. They just changed the names of the subjects they were teaching. And what happened in the 1990s with the professors and I mean with all this Marxist and Hegelian, let's say, philosophical structure, it can be true because like we are poor and and let's say the British and the Americans must way better philosophy because they are successful and rich. I mean, it was that simple at the end.
Who was saying that? The students or the teachers?
Well, I'd say it was both ways. It was a general feeling. Like,
well, did the teachers convert? Did they convert to Anglo-American economics?
Well, the most did. In fact, the most did in the economics, in the faculty of economics, all of them. Maybe one or two remained that converted to more, let's say, Euro, more continental economic flavor that was closer to some kind of let's say we had this working. It was samoupravni socialism. It means let's say market socialism would be one translation.
What about German the Sozialmarktwirtschaft? Did that like Adenauer and Erhard, did that have any impact on the way that people were talking?
No, I would say Rerum Novarum and Quadragesimo Anno had more impact because there were lots of professors that were born as Catholics and from the, let's say, Catholic upbringing, and I think that the encyclicals had a bigger influence than the German economic thought here.
Okay. Well, the Germans were just implementing Quadragesimo Anno anyway.
Okay, fair. It was implemented, but not via Germans, but let's say from reading the direct source. It was even commented in some, let's say, when the encyclical, the last one went out, it was also reviewed by let's say socialist and Marxist professors. I read some reviews and it was they call it it's a cheap trick. They are saying the similar things that we are, just he's not calling it socialism and that kind of discourse.
Well, the conservatives say the same thing about Catholics over here. Anytime you disagree, they call you a communist. But conservatism is dead over here. Conservatism is completely irrelevant now, largely because of what I said at the beginning, because the big threat now is not government. We don't have a government. We've got oligarchic warlords who rule us, and they're called Google and Amazon. And what does conservatism have to say about this? Nothing. It's good. It's not tyranny if the private individual does it. If it's not government, it's not tyranny. Conservatism is completely dead and completely irrelevant to the world we live in.
We are coming to these terms too. Here we let's say we don't have what would you call conservatism. Would be here some center-right nationalism or something like that.
Well, libertarianism, Austrian school economics.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. This defense of capitalism as state-sponsored usury. The whole thing, it's all obsolete. It's all gone. It was killed by two people. One of them was Donald Trump, and the other one was Pope Francis. Between the two of them, they killed conservatism. It's completely irrelevant now.
I think that will need few years to come to us. We are always behind. we always lagging behind.
What type of reception would my book Barren Metal have now? Let's say if we did a seminar combining Barren Metal and Logos Rising. What type of reception would I get in Croatia?
Well, the Barren Metal is a huge book.
Yes.
It would. I think what would have a nice reception in Croatia was Libido Dominandi for sure, and maybe one of the early books about the modernity or about the architecture. I think that would be
okay. So,
easy to understand.
Tell me, who controls the university now in Croatia?
Well, the same folk that were in the university before. Nothing changed in the university. The same...
Marxist?
Well, it's more like a coalition here. It's a coalition of... Well, let's call it... they are former Marxists. In the US, you would call it left-wingers.
Is it Foucault? Is it sexual liberation as the form? Is that the new Marxism in Croatia? That's Dusan Makaviev's version. It started in Croatia. The promotion of Wilhelm Reich started, not in Croatia, but in Yugoslavia.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
It is. Of course it is.
Foucault.
But it's mixed. It's like some in large coalition. There are Foucauldians. There are former Marxists. There are also some Austrian school libertarians, all meshed together, just to be opposed.
Foucault became an Austrian school libertarian in San Francisco. He was teaching courses on von Mises.
Yeah,
Berkeley.
They all go together, and what they are opposing is this. I don't know. I would call it traditionalism.
Where are the Catholics? Where are the Catholics?
The Catholics.
In Medjugorje? Are all the Catholics at Medjugorje? They're all smoking dope.
No,
they're all shooting up phony apparitions. Where are the Catholics in Croatia?
The Catholics are.
I mean, at the university. I'm talking about where are the representatives of the Catholic intellectual tradition? Where are they?
They're on the internet mostly, for most of the part. There are a few portals and a couple of let's say blogosphere, and they are on the internet, in the media, in all the media except for the Catholic ones. There is this constant barrage that is, I guess, the same like everywhere else in Western Europe or in America. It's basically the same news, the same format, the same messages, just repackaged.
Yeah.
And you have the Catholics, well, stuck on the internet, the only firm ground that they can stand on is some kind of ethno-traditionalism, but this capitalism is also trying to get smuggled into
Right.
this traditionalist
Did,
movement.
did you see the show I did with Aleš Nechi, the
Yes,
Slovenian?
yes, I've seen the show.
So who pops up on the show? It's Tom Sunic. Tom Sunic suddenly shows up, and I asked Tom, "Are you white or are you Catholic? I know you're Croatian, but are you white or are you Catholic? Is Tom Sunic? Does that represent a significant portion of Croatian thought at this point?"
No, does not. I think he is a project to popularize that kind of a thought here. He has a blog. I mean, he's read about, but it's not the way. It's not. He's not the. I don't think that most of people would buy him.
Well, it's not surprising. White has nothing to do with Yugoslavia.
That's
it
right.
has nothing to do with that.
The white has nothing to do with Croatians and Serbs.
That's right. Absolutely.
What dynamic that's in Croatia and I guess in Serbia too is this constant warfare that's religious in nature but is disguised as ethnic conflict. And there is this question about identity, about stealing and imposing each other some identities that are misleading, and there's a question about the relations between the nation, let's say nationality, nation state, morality, and the church.
Right.
Let's say, what are the priorities? I mean, the nation state, the nation is I guess it's a natural phenomenon.
It's a natural phenomenon. It is the same as the family, because the essence of human identity is logos, and the first manifestation of logos is the language which you speak, and you get that language from your ethnic group. You learn it from your mother, and you get it from your ethnic group. You do not get it from your family. You get it from your ethnic group. And so Croatia is a classic example of something that is a category of nature. White is a category of the mind. That's imposed for political purposes. But ethnos is a category of nature every bit as much as the family.
There's no problem with this in Croatia. It will be understood. Tom Sunic is not a representative of, let's say, of the majority of, let's say, Croatian thinking people. The problem is here. What about the nation state, the borders, and the morality? Are we pushing the interests of our nation? And what's the limit here?
Right. That's exactly the issue. So is George Soros active? Does he control the university in Zagreb in the same way he controls it in Hungary? The Hungarian government banned his university because they saw it was subverting the Hungarian nation state. Is that true of Croatia?
No, our president actually decorated George Soros some 10, 15 years ago because he spent a ton of money here in Croatia.
That's right. So it is the same situation. It's exactly the same situation.
Open society. So what we have here, but I can see what's let's say what's tempting about Soros, because after all these wars, people are sick and tired of these ethnic conflicts, and you want some resolution or some explanation of it.
And right. One of those to the Jews. Jew money, the solution to every problem.
Yes, but where I'm taking this, it's constant. It's the same question with Americanism. At least it's not the same question, but I see it this way. We are Croatian, we are Catholics, but what we are first? What has a priority here? This is the catch. I think, because if you go too much in the national direction, if you regard yourself, let's say, let's put it this way. One Serbian media personality said that in this day and age, no nation can survive in this environment, at least if it does not think of itself as a chosen nation. I mean,
so we're all Jews now. We have to be Jews.
Exactly, but in a balkanized way. We are. I mean, the problem starts when you start seeing your nation as a super tribe.
That's right.
And if you start dispensing morality, if by the line, if something is good for my nation, it's moral. I think it's the same, right. Similar thing.
This is part of the problem with ethnos. Ethnos by itself cannot survive. Ethnos by itself means that you are the only human being and that everyone else is subhuman and you can kill them if you want. This is exactly the way tribes live that have no contact with civilization. There are tribes in India. Alish just sent me a documentary about this tribe they discovered in India. They're still acting that way. They're off in the woods somewhere, and the guy talks about how he used to go and kill the people in the other tribes, and he was proud of it. That's how you gain status, by having the number of skulls you had of the enemy tribe in your hut. That's why ethnos needs logos. You have to have some type of transcendent relationship, transcendent set of values. That's what the Catholic Church provided to Europe. That's why Europe developed the way it did. If you have transcendence without ethnos, you have complete deracination. It's just like a philosophy or an ideology. Okay? It's like a soul without a body. It's like a ghost. The ethnos is the body and logos is the soul. You need both of them. That's why the Catholic Europe was so successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously Catholic, and I understand it, that you need to subordinate, I guess, your ethnicity to your ethnic or your national interest must be on the priority list under the, let's say, the logos. It must be. It's always viewed throughout the Croatian history as about, let's say, submitting to the Vatican, submitting to the Pope. Is a recurring theme in all of Croatian history. Yeah, I saw the
Mestrovic statue in Split, where the bishop is giving the finger to Rome. I mean, he's holding up this finger. If he were an American, he would hold up this finger. But this is a standard Mestrovic kind of Croat, what should I say, resistance to Rome. Because Rome, we're not talking about Rome here. We're talking about Logos here. And the Catholic Church as the manifestation of Logos. We're not talking about the Vatican. That's where the problem starts. When you have some type of temporal power play, all the way up to the independence of Croatia. I think that was problematic there too. This exercise of political power. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Catholic Church in a spiritual sense as the vehicle of Logos in human history. Everyone has to come to grips with that, because that is the motion of Logos in history. And it's been that way ever since St. John wrote his gospel and took over the word Logos from the Greeks. You can't escape that anymore. No ethnic group on earth can escape this reality anymore. It's simply a fact.
Amen.
Amen, brother. I'm preaching to the choir here. You should be preaching this to me. You know it. The Americans don't know it. That's the problem. Anyway, it's been good. I'm glad we had this discussion.
Mike, thank you for your time.